From magazine editor to fragrance founder, I'm so excited to welcome Nedahl from Recreation Beauty, who's one of my all-time favorite natural fragrance brands. Nedahl, thank you so much for joining me on Earth Day.
Thanks so much for having me, Marissa. Excited to be here.
Thank you. For anyone who isn't familiar with Recreation Beauty, can you share a little bit about the brand and how it might be different from other fragrance brands on the market?
Yep. So we are a clean fragrance brand, and I'm not sure if that means much to many people, but regular fragrances and perfumes that, I grew up with my whole life actually can contain up to 3,000 chemicals in them. And not all of those are harmful, but some of those are harmful. And some of them are very well-known, scientifically proven endocrine disruptors. And if they're an endocrine disruptor, it means that they can mess with your hormone system, which basically regulates our entire body. I think if you're a woman, you know that if your hormones are out of whack, you are not feeling the best. So it can give you everything from mood swings to weight gain. It can mess with your reproductive system. It affects your fertility. And it's not only of women, it's also of men. So it really affects both sexes, and it can affect, anything from there's been links to autoimmune diseases, much more serious diseases. And so it's really something that I found surprising. And I only discovered it when I was trying to get pregnant about 15 years ago, struggled to get pregnant, couldn't get pregnant for years. And then I found out about all this stuff, and it was a real shock to me because I had been a magazine editor and I had a whole giant cupboard full of product. And I just basically gave it all away and started again with clean beauty.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think that's something that we're not really educated around, especially like even as I was growing up, it was more like what smelt the best or what was the prettiest bottle, not so much what was actually inside it or what was I actually putting on my skin and how it then could affect my body.
Yeah. And so, we don't know what's in fragrance. And that's the thing. It's a proprietary blend, which I can also understand being in the business. You don't want people to know what's in the formula because, you don't want people to copy you. And there are so many dupes around and all that kind of thing. It's definitely an issue.
Yes.
But at the same time, there's no transparency with these ingredients, so we don't actually know what's in these products. And that, I guess, is the risky thing. Also, because the fragrance industry is regulated by the big businesses in that industry. So it's actually a self-regulated industry. So the businesses that make the money are the ones who set the regulations for what products you can use and what ingredients you can put in them. So that's a bit concerning as well.
Well, yeah, it's not like there's an overarching board or anything that can help to regulate or ensure that things are healthy or safe to put on your body.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
So I guess when it comes to, the phrase even clean beauty, I know it's thrown around a lot and some people can be skeptical when they hear that, thinking that maybe the product's not as effective or, what are clean ingredients? And I guess what made you, in addition to what you've just shared, decide to create a natural fragrance brand?
Well, when I started, I wasn't even sure it was possible, to be honest. And I spoke to many perfumers who wouldn't do it because they couldn't use all of those ingredients that they wanted to use. But, since then, it's come a long way. And I think even, when I ditched all of those makeup products and skincare and everything that I used to use, there wasn't really any perfume around. There was nothing that I could use. But technology has come a long way, and we have these ingredients. We've been able to extract amazing extracts and resins, and there's everything that you smell is obviously better if it's natural because that's where it comes from, the actual source.
Yes.
And so these ingredients are actually much nicer. They're more expensive. It's not the cheap option. It's not the option that doesn't work. It's actually the reason those big companies don't use them is because they're too good and they're too expensive and they don't want to spend that much money on them. So once you learn that as well, you actually realize that this is a superior product rather than an inferior product.
That's a great point. I never thought about it like that. So I guess for a lot of those big brands, their profit margin, very important to them. So the cheaper the ingredients that they're putting in there, the more money they make, but not necessarily, I guess, more beneficial for the consumer. It could really be impacting them and their health.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you've done an amazing job. All your scents are incredible. Your new fragrance is so beautiful. So you've created a really beautiful collection of scents. But I also love that you've never used any single-use plastics or compromised on your packaging. And I guess how important was plastic-free packaging to you when you were creating your range?
So this was really, really important to me. It's just one of my, basic moral, ethical values, I think, not contributing to the waste that we have in the world. And, I live by the beach and I certainly don't want to be a part of the problem. I think that was the biggest thing to me. I don't want to be a part of the problem. I want to be a part of the solution. Because again, companies can do this if they just start. Like it's not the demand, the supply. Like it took me so long to find, for example, an insert for our boxes that wasn't foam. We used to use this kind of cardboard folded origami type thing that it took so long to fold, but I refused to use the foam. And then I finally found an insert that was it's made from 100% sustainable bamboo. And I think that, the more demand there is from companies who want to buy those like inserts that are made from bamboo, then the more companies that will make them. And the problem is that too many companies are just happy to go with plastic. And I just don't see, I mean, I couldn't, as a brand owner, feel comfortable ordering, because you're ordering thousands and thousands and thousands of your packaging, and I couldn't with a clear conscience order that in plastic or foam. Yeah.
That's so good. Like, and it, I guess comes back to your morals as well, because I mean, typically if you go to a department store and you go to the fragrance section, like all the fragrances are wrapped in a plastic film. Generally inside the box, there's like you said, a plastic insert or some other form of plastic holding it together. The caps are plastic. Like there are just so many parts of the fragrance that aren't recyclable, are just going to end up in landfill. So I really love that you've had that more considered approach. And like it's not the easier way out to go down these roads and find these new methods and these new ways. It's really thinking outside the square of what's going to be better long term for the planet, and also I guess what's easier for the consumer to dispose of at the end of its life as well.
Exactly, because you do have to think about how these things are used and how they're going to be disposed of, and how, there is a balance between how important it is to the consumer to what you actually use, because, sometimes they will just opt for the plastic because that's an easier option for them. But, I think the more brands that do this and the more brands that make it less of an option, then the better we'll all be. I mean, I don't want to swim in an ocean full of plastic. I'm pretty sure nobody does.
No, and I mean, making these changes now, it can only be beneficial for the future of, your children and their children's children. So, by starting and making these switches now, it's going to make a big impact and, a big positive change in the environment.
And I think that was a real consideration for me when I started a brand. I just didn't want to be a part of the problem. I think that's what came down to it. I just didn't want to be a part of the problem.
No, I love that. So your bottles themselves are made from glass and they have an aluminium cap. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So once someone's finished with their bottle, what's the best way for them to dispose of that?
They can actually just pop it straight into the recycling, into the glass recycling. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess one thing that I've always wondered, and I hope other people find helpful, so when people are looking to make that switch from, I guess, more traditional fragrances or conventional fragrances to natural, do you have any advice for people wanting to make that switch?
Yes, because natural perfumes aren't the same as synthetic and the regular perfumes that you see on the shelf, because those synthetic perfumes do have they are literally endocrine disrupting ingredients. They do a number of things. They and there's also these there are synthetic musks in the other fragrances that are also really harmful. They are endocrine disruptors as well. They're the ones that make fragrances last for sometimes fragrances can last for 2 days or something, which is just not good for you.
No.
And I think people kind of have to get used to you know, spraying a bit. So when it's a natural fragrance, it's not overwhelming. You can spray a bit more. It's not going to give you a headache, and it's not going to, you know, get up your nose or get in your throat or that kind of thing. So you can spray a bit more.
Yeah.
Obviously, spray what suits you. And then always prep your skin before applying a natural fragrance. So you want your skin to be moisturized with either lotion or body oil. And then you can top up throughout the day. So I don't think that's too much of a compromise to make when you're literally not contributing to hormone imbalances in your body. Like if your mood is of any importance to you,
Yes.
then I would definitely think that that is a good compromise.
I totally agree. And it's funny you say that. I had someone ask me for a recommendation for a long last or for a natural fragrance. Naturally, I suggested Recreation Beauty, but they said, is it long lasting? I said, well, I guess it depends what you feel is long lasting. To me, if I'm using a fragrance and it lasts, you know, half the day and I have to reapply, but I'm also applying a fragrance which is kind to my body, to my health, to the environment, I would much rather reapply than put a chemical onto my body, which might last, but will have other ongoing impacts, which might be negative. So
exactly. So the chemicals in those particular chemicals are also known in the scientific community as persistent. So they don't break down. So they don't break down in your body never gets rid of them, and they don't break down in the environment either. So when they get washed down the sink, they just go straight into the aquatic sea life, which is really bad for both, you know, for both things.
I didn't realize that actually. So then that affects sea life as well, ultimately, because it never breaks down. Oh my God, that's awful.
Yeah.
Here I am learning something new
There's all
again.
these
Oh my
things that
God.
you don't think about. You're like, it's just perfume. But you know what? Like most of these formulas were made back in, you know, the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
And we didn't know anything then. Like, you know, everyone smoked cigarettes thinking that was fine too. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not
There's so
like
much
it's not
awareness
like
now.
we haven't, yeah, it's not like we haven't come a long way in
Yeah.
science. Like there are alternatives now. There are things that you can use. And I just think we're exposed to so many toxins elsewhere, like in our world. You know, there's pollution in the street, there's the same chemicals are in plastics and that are in perfume. They're in plastics and in vinyl and in some carpets and in some foam furniture and that kind of thing that you can't stop your exposure to. So, you know, it's much more difficult to stop your exposure in that way than it is to choose a different, much better alternative for you with your fragrance and your beauty products.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to quickly circle back. You've mentioned endocrine disruptors a couple of times. And I guess for anyone who doesn't know what that is, or I guess the impact of that, do you mind just giving us a little quick rundown?
Yeah, so basically your endocrine system controls your hormones, and it can give you hormone imbalances. And I mean, I know as a woman that I've certainly encountered many a hormonal imbalance in my lifetime. And we all know what kind of an impact that can make every month. And if you are constantly feeding your body something that impacts your hormones, like just imagine like on an everyday basis that is accumulative, that is, you know, in a lot of different products. It's not just in your perfume, it's in the fragrance in your body wash, in your body lotion, in your laundry powder, in your dishwashing liquid. It's in, you know, it's in so many different things. And what they have tested, so they might have tested these things in the small amounts that they use them. And so for each product, it's fine. But what we talk about is the toxic load. So you know, women can use like 20 products a day. You know, you think about it, your cleanser, your moisturizer, eye cream, mascara, eyeshadow, foundation, shampoo, body wash, blah, blah, blah. Like the list is endless. And then you've got these household products as well that you also use. So, you know, it's the toxic load and it's the accumulative load of all of these things because they don't break down in your system. And that's what can mess you up.
That's so interesting and so helpful. I hope that really does help anyone who's listening who was either unaware or unsure of what that meant. And it helps them make better choices as well for their self, their health, and the environment ultimately. I want
Yeah.
to Yeah, I want to thank you just so much for being here today and for the incredible range you've created and the awareness as well that you're sharing around, natural fragrances. I think you've done such an incredible job. And yeah, I'm just so happy that you've joined me today.
Oh, thank you so much, Marissa. I really appreciate it and appreciate all your support.
Oh, thank you so much.